just gave a thumbs up, so it looks like he's ready.
All right, ready?
Ready?
All right.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Everyone is present. We've got 3 additions to the agenda.
Also move to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and second to approve the addition to the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Open forum. Anybody wish to speak? Okay, move on to the consent agenda.
Also move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Board and staff report, police report.
Hey, good evening. Lieutenant Lenz couldn't make it tonight, so he sent me, Joe Litchie. This is for February of 2013. You guys had 37 contract hours we provided for you. Looking over the call list, I'll go with that first. It shows that we had the major calls we had is a felony assault over at Stoney's one night when they had their wrestling thing there. It was one of the wrestlers who assaulted a patron. Other than that, it's just other minor calls. Shows that you guys, we issued 7 adult citations for miscellaneous driving offenses and 1 juvenile citation. And you're gonna notice on your contract hours, we're gonna increase our traffic stops, not only for Rockville area, but countywide to try to reduce the amount of accidents we're having in the county. So you're gonna see an increase in the traffic stop load every month now, so.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Guys have a good night.
Thank you.
You too. Okay, new business or old business, okay, whatever. Written response to Rick Talman's questions on the sewer debt.
Mayor and council, this came up at the last council meeting when Mr. Tallman approached the council requesting some information on the sewer debt and how that was charged, or how that was set up way back when it went in. So this is the written answer to him. Basically, what it says is, back then, the city got a 0% interest loan, and the council members at that time, I believe, felt it would be prudent just to not assess anything, but let whoever's the property owner of that parcel pay as it went on, and then when the bond was paid off, it would be retired. I believe that's what it was.
Okay,
So if you want to approve this, this is something I can submit to Mr. Tallman.
okay.
We need any action item?
Yeah,
Respond back to
Respond,
Mr.
you have to, I
Tallman?
would like you to approve what I'm giving to him.
Does anybody have any questions on the response and the figures that are presented on the backside?
How much time do we have into this?
Oh, maybe 6-7 hours of my time, and then I know Judy's got time into it, but hers is putting together some different spreadsheets for the meeting tonight too, so.
Okay.
All right.
A motion be in order to
I'll
approve
make
the
a motion
response.
to have Rena take these correspondence and respond that back to Mr. Rick Tallman as presented.
I'll second it. Go ahead.
Motion's been made and second was by Sue. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Next item is feasibility report for Burke Street.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you guys got a chance to read through the report. I'm sure it was very interesting for you. Bedtime reading and whatnot. Basically, nothing came as a surprise. It's kind of really the same thing we've been doing for the last couple of years in town here with our street improvement projects. The estimates, I looked at them again from when we did the preliminary numbers a couple of months ago, and nothing's really changed. The bid prices that we've seen so far have really been coming in where they're at, so that number is good. The report you see in front of you goes through the assessments like we talked about, and basically, like I said, no surprises from what we discussed at Public Works Committee and also in past council discussion as well. So,
How much do we have in the road and bridge fund?
It's funny, I kind of thought you'd ask that. Of this, on this report, Dave's looking for like 314,000 for the city share, but that includes 80th and Holly Road.
I assume those were 100% assessed based on they'd be petitioned, so really it
Right.
wouldn't have impact, but yes, that would include those as well. I
With
guess.
what we had in the fund balance at year end, plus the 264 that we put in this year, be 437,000 that we would have available. Now, remember that Fund 215 is where we've been paying out projects, people are paying back, so we're getting things back into the fund.
That 80th and Holly, the property owners, refresh my memory where.
When
I
we
know they come
last,
to us.
we last left them, I think it was last year, Rick, chime in here, we decided not to do it last year, we were gonna put gravel at that intersection, or,
Yeah, we had the people on Holly Road petition us last year to repave that road, and we looked at it, and we thought we could just pacify them by hauling gravel onto that intersection of Holly and 80th. I believe late last summer or fall they were here. Again,
Yeah,
requested
there's
to have it paved.
there's one guy here, that's right. Well, I've been on that road, I guess, a few times this winter. I mean, what's the thought? It seems like it's, well, I don't
The
know,
road
it's
is all
frozen.
cracked up. The problem with doing anything substantial is that it's a floating road. It's basically the same level as the lake, so our hope is that we can mill it off and just put another layer of asphalt on it.
So is our idea to sit down with the 80th and Holly Road people and see if they want this? Is that what?
Correct,
Right.
I know the 80th people have been in requesting that road to be tarred. It's our only gravel road out in that area. So it'd save the city time and money from having to grade it and dust control it also.
So do we have 100% of the property owners? Because
You would have to hold a special meeting now that we
to
got the
do
numbers.
that, okay.
There's one of the roads out there that was never tarred from, what's the name of that one? Do you?
80th Avenue.
That's the 80th?
Yeah.
And at one
Well,
time,
Holly is kind of, well, I guess it's all spider cracked, yeah.
yeah, but wasn't 80th the one that, if it's never been before, and if all the owners were going to petition the city to get a good price when you're mobilizing all the rest of it? So, has
The-
that happened, or has that?
The one issue that I still have with 80th is that it's so low that I still think it needs to be built up. And I think, is that part of this, or is that just
No,
overlaying?
all we're
it?
gonna do on
Yeah.
80th is reshape it and pave it.
Yeah.
I know last year there was talk of one guy that lives on that road, he was just gonna pay to have that road tarred by himself and then call it his. Which can't really work.
What would be in order now is for you to accept the feasibility report, call for a public hearing, and that's the resolution that I have typed up for you, resolution number 2013-09. And at that hearing, then, we would notify all the individuals affected. At the hearing, you decide whether or not you want to go ahead with it. Correct, Dave?
Yeah, we could certainly do 2 hearings if you wanted to do the Berg Street one, since we've already had input on that one, we could schedule that one and have more of an informal discussion with the 80th at Holly Road. Or we could do all at the same time and just let the cards fall where they may.
I think,
I guess my only issue though is with Holly and 80th, I still feel that if that road isn't gonna be brought up to specs, I don't wanna take the risk on it. And basically what we're saying is once it's paved, then we forever have to keep it up to spec. And, I mean, that road, unless it's built up and dug out and dredged out, it'll never be to spec.
That's true.
So, I mean, I have a hard time saying, or let's throw 90,000, or even though they're gonna pay for it or whatever, 90,000 in my opinion is somewhat of a money down the drain. And to even bring it up and say that we'll do it, then I feel like we're taking on the, you know, the responsibility for that road, and I'm not sure I want that. You know, unless those people are willing to reshape that road and get it up to spec, because it's never been that way. I don't know if I wanna send that out like that. I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, but.
Randy, I think I agree with you, and I think it would be nice to break it into two motions, so we could maybe move forward on Berg Street, and then,
Yeah.
you know, maybe have not a public hearing per se, but a meeting
Yep,
with the other ones and really discuss what is the best long-term solution.
I mean, I remember
For the
last year
roads.
having
Right.
a
done
meeting
that.
with them. And at that time, I believe it was in the 150,000 range to dig it out, and that was just the one area, and they didn't seem to want that, so I'm kind of surprised to see this back on here, but, I guess, yeah, that'd be my opinion is, I think we need to sit down and talk with them before we go and commit to,
I think the reason we put it was on here is because of last fall when the person from Holly Road came. This would be a time to, if they do want it, we could combine it with the Berg Street, and if they don't want it, we can put an end to this discussion. Give them one last chance, and
see, the thing is though, if they see these numbers, they're gonna like, oh, okay, we'll do it, you know, and then it becomes our responsibility. So I would rather see the numbers that are showing what it would cost to reconstruct the road and get up to spec, and then sit down with them.
currently that road is our responsibility whether we fix it or not. My fear is if the tar goes away, there might not be nothing left underneath that's
Exactly,
gonna save us either.
yeah. Well, and I agree with you, Sue, maybe let's do this in two motions. I mean, I'd like to see it split out, and I'll go ahead and so move to accept the Berg Street and Elvin and Marlene Court.
For public,
And
to go out for public hearing?
And send that to a public hearing.
Okay.
I'll second that.
And if I could just quickly add a footnote, we should remember that on the south side of Grand Lake, not that many years ago, many of us were sitting on the council here that did that, and that was short-lived, and that was money that was wasted. So quite frankly, unless you do it proper up the grade, so I agree with you, Randy, that unless we have the proper, bringing it up to specifications, it doesn't do any good for us to go out there and just put a top on it without having a proper substrate.
Motion's been made second to accept the feasibility report for Berg Street, Elvin, Marlene Court, and schedule a public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Well, and then I'll go ahead and make a motion to, have it re-looked at for 80th and Holly Road, and have that, have what it would cost to bring the road up to spec.
Have our engineers,
Yeah.
We've actually done that report already a couple of years ago.
That's what I was thinking, we've
I
had-
can pull it out, look at the cost for 5 minutes and tell you if it's close, you know,
All
so
right.
we can at least get you a good idea of what you're looking at.
Well, and then I think we should invite the residents to
Right,
another
yeah.
meeting, just to say sort of one more time.
yep. Reiterate what
Them
was,
at the same meeting as the Berg Street
I think that would
people?
be fine.
yep.
Just have a separate informational meeting.
All right.
Yep.
And the sooner rather than later, because after you get the summer contracts completed, then the price seems to go up. So if we can go ahead with this project, and we wouldn't need to bond at this stage of the game based on those preliminary costs that we have thus far.
One thing we have to remember, we might have other road issues coming up in the future that if we don't have money in the other funds, we have to fix it. So
True.
roads have deteriorated over the winter, considerable,
Yeah,
that will be a must fix.
but that would be maintenance more so than,
But some of it is gonna be a little more than just plain maintenance. If you've driven a few places, some culverts where they're washed out, ground is caved away on them.
Well, we're not precluded from still doing a bond, right?
No.
I mean, we just continue with the process and we could still make that determination.
true.
And there's some legislative action going down there about some improvement districts and stuff going on there that Jeff is looking at, but I don't know what's gonna come about. That could be funding that you can, another way of funding projects.
Let's hope not.
Okay.
I
We don't
watch the
need a
same
motion.
legislation. I'm on the other side of the aisle on that one, Donnie.
All right.
Next item.
Wait,
Wait,
we had, Randy, you made a motion to
I'll
schedule
second
that informational
Oh, you
meeting.
want,
I'll second that.
motion been made second to have informational meeting on Holly and 80th Avenue. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
And those will both occur at the next council meeting on April 17th,
And reinvite.
6:30 and 6:45.
Okay.
Do you want to go with the public hearings earlier, Rena, or should we
Or
go
we
down
could
on?
take some other stuff out of the way first, yeah.
Okay, I have nothing on the mayor's report, Quarry Trail. Nothing new?
Nothing.
Thing that's new, funding
Okay.
didn't come through and we're kind of treading water.
Okay, administrators correspondence?
What we have is the 4 parcels that were forfeited this year to the state of Minnesota. And this is the same process as what we did last year, where we went through each one lot by lot. You see where the county has just taken the value and divided it in half. That's pretty much what we approved on it we went with that last year. And we would have to take a motion. And I believe none of these had assessments on. Oh, wait, nope, one did, the one on Bluebird Court. Where does she have all the maps?
Though it says the remaining assessment balance is relatively small, $838.
Yeah. Oh, that's a different one, okay. What these are is it's 2 outlots up in Prairie Industrial Park. I believe I emailed a whole bunch of stuff to you guys that you had copies of it. Yeah, there's one out. Let's see. 2 are outlots in Prairie Industrial Park, and then one is a small acreage that's right next to Linneman's, it used to be Jeff's
Auto, that's auto,
Freedom Auto.
Freedom Auto, that one. 10,300 on that, I mean,
okay.
I don't, I guess I don't see anything wrong with what they've done, it's the same thing they did last year.
And the assessments we can put back on. I mean, I
Yeah,
know it's not a
in
whole lot,
fact-
but do we put that on now or do we put that on after?
After they're sold. And that's one of the additions to tonight's agenda. I'm gonna ask you to schedule a meeting, public hearing for next month to put, the lot that's right next to C up there in Prairie Industrial Park.
That was sold on the
That was
sheriff's
sold.
auction last year.
Yeah, and we wanna, now is our time to put the assessment back on it.
Perfect. All right, also move to accept the appraised price on the 4 forfeited lots.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chair, quickly, and that is, if that is the case and somebody contacts either the city to find out or the county, are we assuming that we're going to reassess that, the full assessment amount? Because that certainly would show up on that title opinion if they're looking at buying or, in Mr. C's case, that unit that one was next door. But even in this one here, that we were just talking about, the, next to Freedom Auto,
I think generally with the assessments, I mean, if they make sense and if there's enough value there, I would say yes.
we would reassess them at the same face
Yeah.
value
Yeah.
as before. 'Cause
Actually, yeah, the one up on Bluebird Court with the remaining balance of $838.48, you'll want to put that back on, so I will note that.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be my intent.
Yeah.
I mean, that one, the assessment's small enough, I think
Yeah.
it's fine to put
Right.
it back on, but good question.
Okay.
All right, motion been made second to approve the
Seconded.
auction or appraised prices on the 4 said lots. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Sue, did you second that? Or who did?
Sue did.
Yep.
Sue did.
Next item is rental ordinance update.
Mayor and council, at the last council meeting, you did a two-month moratorium on the rental ordinance in itself. You want to know what kind of money did we take in, what's been spent? And I also got the comments from our building official too for you. Money that was taken in was $950, and what we've paid out was $630 plus $210, $840 that we paid out, so,
So basically, we've done 19 inspections so far this year. They're $50 a piece.
no, 9.
Some of them are $100.
Oh, that's right, some are- that's
They're all
And
$100 minimum.
There's checks that we've held because of, when they came in now, so.
So really, when I read his comments, it looks like he was suggesting we should at least do it every 2 years for safety reasons. Correct?
Yes.
I guess when I read that, what prompted was a question of what kind of safety issues this you think's gonna occur in a 4-year period versus a 2-year period?
I think that if our intent is to keep the ordinance, I mean, my belief would be, I would rather see us err on 4 years than less. And if we start to see an issue come within the city that we are developing slumlords or whatever, we can always change it. But, you know, obviously there's somewhat of a vested interest for our inspector here to inspect it every 2 years. So, I mean, I guess my belief would be every 4 years would be fair, or do away with the ordinance altogether. That'd be my desire.
I mean, this issue came up because of the dissatisfaction with annual inspections, and to go to 2 years really isn't
2 years,
Oh.
isn't it?
a heck of a lot of change.
Yeah.
The
You
4-year
said every
period,
year.
is that what Jeff
I
Howe?
read this that we had what we were doing was
We are back
Biannual.
biannual now.
And Jeff suggested to us to change it to 4. Don was at that same meeting, Don and you and I and Jeff, before he is now our state representative, and he made a lot of changes, and I think that they made a whole lot of sense, or something like that. So either we go to 4 years, or as Randy stated, or go and omit it entirely. So we do have nuisance ordinances, we have all kinds of protections already at this stage of the game, but certainly at this stage of the game, 4 years, what we were trying to create, and that was, if there is a blatant call and it's quantified that it's a legitimate one, then it's a different story. Then they should have to bring it up to the par and probably inspect it more often. But as a standard policy, if we can go and change it from 2 years to every 4 years, that's a major change already at this stage of the game, and that should be some relief. So it's the honest ones that are out there that are trying to do their job of keeping their product in great shape. That's not the ones that we have a problem with.
Right.
And it's that 1 or 2 isolated cases, and those cases, we probably have mechanisms already to go and start it. Many times, it's going to be to the point where they let it deteriorate, and then we have a building inspector that can condemn it. And we have the nuisance ordinance, so, 4
I'm
years is a
thinking-
minimum, or go to eradicate it entirely.
Remember, Willebring, I think there was the issue too, that being that we did have the ordinance in place, it did help the property or the landlord, gave them some sort of teeth to end the contracts with some of their renters too. There was something with that.
Well, that was
I've been approached by 3 building owners in the last year, and all of them have told me that they feel like it's onerous, it's overly burdensome, and the thought, I mean, they, for the most part, do keep their properties in pretty top-notch order, so I don't know how it pertains to the people that don't, but I still believe that doing away with it would probably take care of them, but I can also understand there are a few that don't take care of their properties as well, and it might be a good deal for them. But I also wonder if you even do every 4 years, what would happen if you do 4 years and then also based on complaints? Or every 6 years and based on complaints, something of that sort. Push it further out, but then if the city receives, 3 verifiable complaints or 2 or whatever, maybe then it kicks in to get it inspected.
If in fact that we go that route, logistically, how did that work out? Are all of them due this particular year, or are they on
The year
staggered
that
every
they're
other
due,
year? So
correct.
they're all due this year.
Right.
And so if we decided that we were going to prolong it to have it every 4 years, that would mean that 2 years from right now, that wouldn't be happening. So do we have it now yet, or do we skip this one entirely? Because we had one 2 years ago. Do we skip it for this year?
I
and
think
go
I
to
would
2
propose making it going forward, so I'd say Because otherwise, we actually are going to, the
Lose
city's
money
gonna
on it.
incur a bill because we all need to pay the building inspector. So I'd say whatever we change it to, and I would be in favor of, say 4 or 5 years. And I like the idea, Randy, maybe if there's like 2 verifiable complaints or something, it could trigger it. So we could put some language in. So, maybe we could say 5 years. And so I'd say they're done now and then it's good for 5 years unless we have, say, 2 complaints or something. And then it would trigger an inspection and that would be the same, the fee for.
The fee would then kick in and
Right.
and it would, yeah. Well, yeah, I could live with that. So, I mean, I'd go ahead and make a motion to accept it with the changes, that we change it from every 2 years to every 5 years. With the, addition that if the city receives 2 verifiable complaints, and they gotta be people that leave their name and say that they.
So nothing anonymous, it
Yeah,
has to be.
anonymous, I don't like. 2 people that are actually saying that there's issues, then that would trigger, an inspection for that building.
I'd like to add one thing, Randy, and that is have at least a written report, not just a phone call with somebody at the other end telling Reno or staff. It has to be written, and it has to be, the alleged complaint has to be this, or it has to be that, signed and delivered. Then it warrants it. Otherwise, it's just,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So,
we just
yeah,
went through a noise complaint on the planning and zoning that didn't hit our group here. It was just the most onerous thing that I've ever seen, and thank God staff could neutralize it at one of those things, and I think it's taken care of. But, it's just one of those stupid things that comes along. So if they haven't gone through that effort, at least putting it down on paper and have it written and allege what the complaint is.
And signed by the
Right.
plaintiff,
Yeah,
correct.
and 5 years.
I guess a question, I know there were a few other comments the building inspector had put in here, like deleting a part,
Yeah,
changing a couple language things, and so, I know in one part where section 1.05, display of license, he changed it to every licensed dwelling instead of the language with 4 or more dwelling units, so,
That's in the tenant and owner right to already, so we aren't,
well, I think just to them be consistent, I guess I
Yeah.
would suggest we change the language.
gotcha, yeah.
but if you have more than a minimum, then it needs to be reported. That's in the state rates and tenants already.
And then also as part, I would accept the changes that we've got here, but I'd also make it so it start this year. So let's continue with the inspections this year so it doesn't incur the city's cost. So it'd then be 5 years from 2013.
I have a question on the section that he was suggesting deleting the criminal background checks, Rena. And I'm just wondering, because I do think other cities have that, and I'm wondering why the suggestion to take that out.
I'm not certain, but I think it might be along the lines of, I think they're trying to do away a little more with the criminal background checks. And I'm not certain because they're saying it discriminates against criminals, which I know it sounds a little bit odd, but we actually got some of this stuff.
And that
Yeah,
should,
we went through
that
it.
should really be the objectivity of the landlord. If he or so decides that he wants to, or he or she wants to do that. I don't know if that's necessary for a city to
That's a law
mandate
enforcement.
that.
I thought there were conversations, though, in some other cities about having that in there, and so I guess the question is, if it's not in ours, but it is in other cities, then where is it more likely that you're able to rent?
I don't think that's what triggers it.
But
But I don't know.
I'm just asking.
I know.
It's,
Well, I don't know if Randy's got a second to it, but if he hasn't, I'll gladly second the concept in spirit that we agree with the modification for up to 5 years before the next one, and continue with this one here, so that's well on its way, so we can't really stop it. That would then unlift the moratorium, or does that take separate action?
No, what you're doing here now really is you're motioning to amend it.
Amend
We're
it,
gonna
yeah.
schedule, this motion is actually going to schedule a public hearing. Because this is an ordinance, you have to hold a public hearing. That'll give people time to come in and
Right?
voice their concerns about it too.
Yep. 5 years.
All right, motion's been made and second to approve the changes to the rental ordinance, including the last, which increases the timeframe to 5 years. All in favor, say, and schedule a public hearing.
Public hearing, we'll do that for the next meeting, 4/17.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Okay.
6:30.
6:30, right on.
First public hearing.
First one is the public hearing regarding the supplemental assessment. What happened was inadvertently, this lot right here, now owned by the state of Minnesota, was charged with all sack and whack charges that Archon Development should have been charged. Their number ends in 0443, and it really should have been assessed to 0445. This is the supplemental assessment, moving the ones from 443 to 445.
Does Archon Development know about this?
Yeah. This was mailed out to both the state of Minnesota and to Archon. So it's their
Are they
opportunity.
looking at paying it? It says here that they're gonna pay it by the January 2014? No? Okay.
Has
Well, I
there-
just-
Has there been written objective to the potential of us reassessing? And has anything brought to the mayor tonight? Because it either has to be, so neither one of those two, so if we decide to reassess it and it's a glitch, really, it's just going from that one lot that shouldn't have had it to the outlot B.
And making that other one sellable and all.
And if they
Lot
have,
itself.
and if they haven't done a written objection, or if they have not presented something today, then it's not even appealable. Okay.
Okay. Rita, did you officially open?
It's a whole, a hearing.
It's open, okay. Anybody here wish to speak to this issue?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion been made and second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Also move to do the supplemental assessment and switching the assessment from
Individual lot.
the individual lot to the outlot B.
Resolution number.
45
Second
to
that.
043.
Wait.
Yeah. I'll second Randy's motion.
I think Susan did. Did you?
Yeah.
Susan?
I'll third it.
Motion been made and second to approve the supplemental assessment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
The next thing on the agenda is the public hearing for the adoption of the shade tree ordinance. And tonight, Paul Worth here is here from the Park and Rec Board to answer any questions for you. What this was, you remember last year, we planted how many trees, Paul, 36? 33.
About that, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember exactly.
Right. And part of the agreement from the state of Minnesota, in order to reimburse us $2,500,
25.
yep, we had to have this type of ordinance in place. Now, just so you know, it's not an ordinance that we're gonna have someone running around town looking at people's trees and going on property and, you know, condemning stuff. No, that's not it. It's there that in an event we are hit by some sort of bug and we need some help eradicating it, the state will step in, right?
Well, the way this works, this is not a shade tree policing. by the city at all. What it is an invasive species control ordinance, and it covers 3 that are rather prevalent within the state. One is Dutch elm disease, one is oak wilt, and the last one is called EAB, or emerald ash borer. The grant last year was an EAB grant, and what it does is by planting the species that we did, they're all native species, and they had to go through some scrutiny with the DNR to have these accepted, and they agreed with my list. I have a forestry background. And we planted these on public properties, and the idea is each individual species of trees gives off a different pheromone. So when these EAB insects come in, they're confused because we've got a number of species mixed. We don't have a large group of ash is what they're after. Then they move on. The idea of adoption of this ordinance is if we come to a situation where we have a large invasion. Right now, there's no EAB in this area and there's no oak wilt, but there's plenty of Dutch elm disease. It's been around for years. Occasionally, there are flare-ups. There was a pretty good-sized one a few years ago. The likelihood of this happening here, it's about 50-50. In the event this happens by adopting this ordinance, this would be under the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. They would step in and assist us, because what this ordinance do is it calls for your consideration of hiring a tree inspector and having this tree inspector also do a tree survey. I'm suggesting it's not needed. The ordinance is, but not hiring somebody to do this. It's already in place. Department of Ag regulates the diseases themselves and how to treat them. Department of Natural Resources does the aerial surveys. So if you've ever looked at under panogram, under 3D scope, and looked at these aerial surveys, it's very realistic. They know exactly what's out there. In the event this happens, they would move in with monies and personnel, and we would have accessibilities to grants from them to hire people to control this forest. That's what it's all about. It's modeled from the League of Minnesota Cities, this very ordinance. And they also, if you've noticed, there's been pheromone traps out there. If you see these little purple things up in trees, they monitor things like gypsy moth, forest tent caterpillars, those are the yellow ones. And there's going to be monitoring also for EAB, same type of situation. They're pheromone traps. So don't panic, they're just conducting survey to see if there's anything around. Do you have any questions on the ordinance itself, or can I explain this any clearer?
Mr. Chair, or Mr. Mayor, I do. And when I start to read through that, and our staff suggested that by no means does it intend to have a shade tree cop, I think is the choice of words that she used. But yet, when I read through there page after page, and it talks about the city will do this, and it shall do this, and most of the time it's may. But quite frankly, the further I go into it, it talks about if there is a piece of property that has somebody that drives by, or city maintenance guy, or somebody finds a tree or trees that may be infested, that they would report that to the city. The city then goes forward and asks to have that modified. If it's not modified in a certain amount of days, the city can then go in, much like the weed control, I would sense. That's the same thing as noxious weeds. It has that. But it's odd that when it was marketed to me to be on the side of adopting this, the greatest thing since sliced bread, but yet that's not what this ordinance, what you just shared to us, Mr. Worth, is entirely different than what I envision it or hear. And that is that if that is the intent, that there's funding that goes with that, it doesn't say anything in here, any place in the ordinance, that if there is an enormous amount of if there's enormous amount of blight that's coming in, that there's going to be funding that goes with it or some of that. So where is that? That's what I need to know.
Yes, it's not spelled out in here, but it's covered under two statutes in the first paragraph.
Under where?
Copies of those statutes. But I know how these worked in the past in other areas, other public lands, other cities. It's just
Well,
as a-
and I'm not trying to short-circuit the system. I just have learned through the years, believe but verify. And that's what I'm doing at this stage of the game, is just merely verifying that in fact that it is. And the other evening at a meeting, city staff and you were there, and by design, I specifically probably played dumb as though I had not read it. I took it along, I read it, I had all of these questions prior to that particular meeting. It was marketed again, when we have this great big infestation, money's gonna come rolling in, and it's gonna take care of it. That's great, but I don't see it in here. The other thing is, when the city goes and needs to strong-arm somebody to go out there on their own private property, and it states that everyone, all lands within the boundaries of the city. So it's not like it's just public property. And the challenge that we have, if I can just use it for an illustration at this point, noxious weeds. Just about every year I get a letter from the city because I have noxious weeds on some vacant piece of land that I have. But the city has a lot of noxious weeds. They never get fixed, never get taken down. So I can just see somewhere down the line, in not too distant future, I have a dead tree someplace and I'm gonna get the nastygram from the city, but yet there's lots of dead trees in the cities. Is it gonna cost the city a lot to go and get rid of those? That was the complaint that we had just the other night at the nuisance ordinance. You're not playing fair. You're allowing one thing to happen and not the other. So conceptually, I'm in agreement with the ordinance or the recommendation, but there's a lot that I think that needs to be resolved before I can honestly say that I have a comfort level with it.
With the noxious weed ordinance, so there already are state employees that have authorization to go onto private
Well,
property.
this isn't a noxious ordinance, I'm just using that as an illustration. So we're debating the issue of the shade tree ordinance that is proposed in front of us tonight, shade tree pest control.
Well, and I guess I'll come up with a couple of my worries. I mean, subdivision 9 on page 2, registration of tree care firms. Any person, firm, or corporation that provides tree care, tree trimming, or removal of trees or shrubs for hire must be registered with the Minister or Commissioner of Agriculture. When I read something like this, I just worry, are we putting undue hardship on the people that are working within our city as well as our citizens? I mean, I have not heard anybody, if somebody's got a dead tree, normally I think they would go ahead and get rid of it. I personally think that this is an undue burden. It's just more legislation that I would rather not see. If there's funding, I always hate it when the state puts funding or attaches funding to having to put these laws on the book. Problem is, then you forget about the laws. We're supposed to, institute them as well as police them, and we don't have the personnel to police them.
Right.
We just don't have that, and I mean, we're a small city, and we just don't have the resources. So, reading through this the way I see it, I would not be in favor of it.
I guess I could play devil's advocate in a sense. So, I mean, if somebody had though, I mean, I view this as saying, it's if something happens, to me, this is sort of like, it's more like disaster planning kind of thing. It's like, so somebody gets an invasive species, and what if I'm your neighbor, Randy, and I don't take my tree down, and now yours get infested, and they are dying because I didn't do anything? So there's another side to it. You're saying there's, it's putting a burden on the property owner who has it, but it's potentially an impact on your neighbors or other people. So
But my
it's trying to
understanding-
put something in place, and I also think it makes sense to reference the statutes and not the dollars available, because frankly, those change all the time, and we're not gonna change our ordinance every time the amount of funding changes. So it makes sense to me not to have the dollars in there.
Then why don't we just deal with the areas that we want to, instead of putting in all this stuff that, having a tree inspector, having everybody licensed, who's gonna police it? Who's gonna do that stuff?
I think you made the point that we don't have to have a tree inspector.
don't need
It's
it.
not a requirement by adopting
The
it.
wording in here says may. You
Well,
don't
but
have
this
to.
doesn't. This says any person, firm, or corporation that provides tree care, for hire
That's-
must be registered with the Minnesota.
That's different.
That's, a tree inspector
And I
here,
guess that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's just a lot of undue,
Well, the key word there is registered, and the reason the state wants them registered is so these people know what they're doing. Some of them are so poor, they actually spread the disease.
I'm
need to
assuming
be
it's a
trained.
situation where you find a problem, infestation, and you hire somebody to do it. The state wants to make sure that person
Is
is
reputable.
registered, and you just don't
Exactly.
have anybody come
And
and
it-
get it. So it
and that
doesn't mean we
makes-
have to go out and find every tree trimmer and
No.
No,
whatever in
The
the city and
ordinance
tell
says-
them they gotta register it.
I don't know, I think that's how
It
I
says,
read it.
the ordinance says you make an effort to control.
This, the subdivision right above the one that Randy just alluded to, subdivision number 8, any owner or occupier of land or any person engaging in tree trimming or removal who becomes aware of an existence of a public nuisance caused by a shade tree pest shall report, doesn't say may or might or want to, but shall report this to the city. Then at that stage of the game, then the city has to do what Rena does, is when she gets a complaint and it's a legitimate complaint, she has to act on it. That's what city administrators are charged to do. Then, if that individual doesn't have it done by April 15th in the event of one of these, it states by, if it's done by, or if it's noticed
90
by
days
a
of
certain
jail.
date, it has to be done within 2 months or something like that. I forget it right now. But, it kind of looks to me like we're a bounty hunter going out there to try to find trees that may or may not be up to par. I mean, this is not a laughing matter, Mr. Worth.
I'm not laughing.
This is city tax dollars that we're gonna be wasting if we implement it as it's stated right now. If it comes back modified and says, yeah, we have one, and if there is funding that comes through, great. Quite frankly, I think it boils down to this, and that is, if we would not be looking for money at this stage to have this implemented, and Rena, I think you shared with me in the notes someplace that it says, this is no means that the city will have a tree cop. It will be here in case of a major infestation hits the area. Will come in and help to eradicate. When you say help, does that mean they're gonna stand at the side and be a cheerleader? We have to find our own funds or something like that? The last thing and say, and this is harsh words, but quite frankly, if we wouldn't have asked for the funding for those trees, is that why we need to have that? That's what I heard, is that if we wouldn't have had the funding for those trees, that's what triggered it, and now we need to have an ordinance so that we can get paid that $2,500? Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct. Okay, so now I'm feeling a little violated,
Yeah,
Then it should have been chalked beforehand, and we'd asked for the $2,500, and we said, there has to be a tree ordinance in place. We'd have probably put that tree ordinance in place so we could have got the $2,500 for trees. But now I feel quite compelled that I'm being held hostage right at this stage of the game. To make a vote to pay for $2,500 that should have been brought out before we applied for the grant in the first place.
well, let's just say, though, that this is actually thinking about the future and the possibility.
Okay, then let it stand on its own merit.
That's-
Don't sit there and tie it in with the $2,500 bill that's
I'm not.
created. Okay.
I'm not. I'm saying, I think it makes sense to have something that says, if we get something, there is a way to address it.
I agree.
That's all, to me, that's simply all it's saying.
but it's not though, it's much more intrusive than that. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to what you're saying. I actually think, all right, let's just do something for those three types, but not put all these other stipulations within it. I mean, I just think it gets so onerous when you put on all these stipulations. It becomes much more than just dealing with three types of tree infestations. And I'm wondering if we can amend it to
Yeah,
just adopt the portions that we're looking for. I mean, I think a lot of these other subdivisions are just, they're too far for me to agree to.
Well, I guess a question would be is how much, if you amend it, do you then not become eligible? And it has nothing to do with that other, it's just looking to the future. If we had it, if we take out enough, does it not meet the
Right.
criteria then?
Let me suggest this, Mayor and Council, and Paul, you can help me with this. We could talk to the lady that I've been dealing with in order to get this approved, get the money back. If I were to pick, what you cited so far, if you got more that you want me to have removed, let me see if we can get it passed to them with that stuff removed.
I think what I would be in favor of is just having the three tree infestations I mean, as minimal as we need on something like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that if that's how we need funding, all right, that's how we get it. I too wish that wouldn't have been tied to that and we would have known about that. But at least then we do have a way to at least eradicate the trees.
Right.
If they do, become infested. That would be,
And
that'd
that
be what
actually
I'm
seems
after.
to me that's potentially a benefit
And-
to a property owner, not a detriment.
Yeah, and I can understand it, but I just think it gets, so often legislation becomes much more than what it was intended. And in this sense, I think it's just getting to be a little more than I would like to see passed. And I think that's what I'm looking for.
You can
Mr. Mayor,
change,
may I make another comment? We have other issues tonight. And that is, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, and here's a prime example. But if in fact it is important for us to have that shade tree ordinance in place, the burning question I have of Rena, and that is, what is it gonna cost the city for us for 1 year right now, from this point forward to a year from right now? Do you have a best guess of what it's gonna cost us to have it just implemented? If it's $0,
Zero.
okay, and we're not gonna have a tree cop out there running around checking out in the backyard, the people in the public,
they're doing it right now, I explained that.
okay?
This is
We're the
simply to
council,
say, if
laying
we
it out.
get something serious, there's a way to address
Then
it.
I don't have a
think we're
problem with
making
it.
more.
It's the principle of the thing of how it was presented.
That's what it states here, you don't need a tree inspector, and like Paul earlier said, the DNR is flying over. A lot of us here probably couldn't tell if a tree has oak wilt or whatever in it. They fly over, they're gonna find it. You see a dead tree, I'm not gonna come and say, Dwayne, you got a dead tree or somebody. Most people that are out here, they have dead trees, there's no leaves on, they're gonna cut it down. But if you gotta catch some of these early enough, and the DNR, by flying over, will do that. And you gotta control, if you get that one bug in there, there's gonna be nothing left. And this is just a searched way to help us, when it does happen, you go to DNR, they can take care of it too. We get infestation in a county park, the county park has to take care of it.
I also don't, I don't know enough about trees, Paul, you might be able to help me, but, if one of these bugs come in, isn't it pretty much they're done anyways? You don't really have a chance to stop it. The emerald ash borer, once it comes through, it's gonna come through, isn't it? Is it gonna kill these?
No, there isn't. Department of Ag works with biocontrol agents, and I've worked with a number of these in the past. They have two right now that look very promising. That is an agent, and in this case, one is a weevil and one is a beetle. They will attack these insects, lay eggs inside of them, and kill them.
But it had, for the most part though, when it's started infesting, my wife's from Michigan, so I'm pretty familiar with that, and it took everything. There's not an ash tree for the most part in Michigan. So you're saying that they're finding ways of stopping it now?
Yes.
Oh.
It takes 10 years to do the research, just to be sure we don't have another Asian lady beetle. We all remember that one. But that's the way it works. But they're very close on these. They're very close on agents that kill noxious weeds. But they're careful in doing it because they don't want to create another problem.
This is a public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this topic?
This what I would say is an insurance policy in case of a catastrophic event. In the meantime, they're doing what they're doing already.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second,
Motion been made second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
From my perspective, I would like to see it a little less teeth. But if the rest of the council sees it as is, that's fine. But I'll make a motion that we return this to Rena and see once if we can't get a couple of things that Dwayne and myself talked about. At least the registration of tree care firms. And just maybe talk it over with the lady that you talked with and see once if we can get some of this stuff taken out.
and Randy, my comeback at this stage of the game, it's, I guess if somebody wants to make that motion, I'll probably even go and second it, or I'll probably even vote for it, just so that we get it off the table, get the bill paid for, but it's like high school. I didn't mind it, but it was the principle of the thing that I hated. And that's what I mean right here by the way it's presented to us after the fact. So with that in line, unless your motion dies of a lack of second, I'd make a motion that we go with the shade tree ordinance as presented and get it over and done with.
Well, a motion to
I'll go ahead and withdraw my motion.
Thank you, sir.
Dwayne, you want to restate your motion?
I make a motion that we accept the shade tree as presented, and it'll be back a year from right now, and we'll find out what dollars it truly cost us. We can always rescind it at that time.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Motion been made and second to approve the shade tree ordinance. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
We ready for the next public hearing, Mayor?
The next public hearing is the water rate increase, the monthly flat fee and the volume rate. I just want to take a minute to remind the council that we're all elected here to be objective, and no matter how close an issue might hit home, I encourage you to respect that charge, so. Anybody wish to speak regarding this matter? Go ahead, Rick.
Oh, I think that's gotta get turned on.
Want the computer to quit on the battery just in case. Rick Tallman, 25594 Lake Road. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm going to present a PowerPoint presentation and concerning the water rates increase that's proposed and concerning the entire water rate structure. I know I've been up many a times, and then I've read many council meetings, minutes way back to 2004, and I know all of you are very familiar with the complaints about the base rates, and I don't think you've had solid proof that the rate system is unfair. I'm going to give you that tonight.
Rick, I'm going to remind you, this is a public hearing to discuss the monthly base charge and the usage charge. This is not a public hearing to discuss the number of units per dwelling or,
I'm not talking about number of units per
Okay.
dwelling, I'm talking about the rate structure for everybody on the system.
Okay, this is
Okay.
only a rate increase, though. That's all we can talk about. That's all we can by law talk about in the public hearing.
Okay, well, I'll give you the first 4 slides then on that.
okay, thank you.
Should we cut the lights up here?
Hope there still is when we leave.
Not in here.
It's still on.
I think the projector's searching for the signal here.
Could we, while Rick's trying to get that set up, if there's anybody else who
Yeah.
wanted to speak? Is that okay, Rick, while you're?
Sure. Anybody wish to speak on the issue?
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask a question. So when is the appropriate time to talk about units per building and the fee that goes along with those units and the change that was made in 2004?
The council's already approved the structure of the base charges per unit, and council's sticking with their decision, so there's no other, we're not going to be reviewing that for at least foreseeable future. Go ahead, please.
Mary Stenser, 241 Broadway Street West, better known as John Clark. It's my understanding that there is at least a 3-year reserve in the accounts right now for the water. Is that true?
There is approximately $392,000 in the water fund, but that's not, that's
That's
partly,
not unallocated.
yeah, there's debt to be
Debt.
paid, and that's what that's there
I
for.
understand that. Everyone has debt. At John Clark, I'm on the board. We have debt. But if I had a recommendation to do an increase on the association dues at John Clark, and I had that kind of reserve, they told me today they'd hang me out at the flagpole out front.
The difference on something like that is that there's a balloon payment that's coming up.
I understand that. But you still have this huge increase. You're spending my money. You're representing me. I'm retired. I am on a fixed income. I watch my dollars. And I understand what you have, but you do have a huge, huge amount of money there. And to ask for the increase that you're asking for, I think you need to really think about what you're doing with our money. Thank you for your time.
Yep. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, I need to refresh my question. You said we're not gonna look at that for the foreseeable future. That's pretty ambiguous. Can you give me a more definitive timeline than foreseeable future? When could that be readdressed? When
I
can
tell you,
ask?
why don't you wait until the open forum, and we'll talk about it then.
Anybody else that wish to speak?
I was just basically gonna show her what she was just talking about, the finance committee meeting that shows the $392,000 in there, in the reserve account. That was at the end of 2011. I don't really know what it is now, but
That's right.
that was
That was 2011, yeah.
Yeah. So I would imagine there's a few more funds in there now.
Well, and there's 4 funds in the water fund. Because those are debt service funds, they're all commingled together to make sure that we have money available to pay that sort of stuff.
When is the major debt payments due? Isn't it 2007?
15.
That's right. And how much is that for?
$554,000.
So we actually have to have more, and that's, yeah, I mean, that's basically why we have the
So
reserves.
if
I mean, the
if we
issue-
spent those
right.
reserves, then when those debt payments came due, then we'd have to come to citizens and ask them to kick in a huge amount of money to make those debt service. That wouldn't be
We're
good
not
financial
asking
management.
to spend those reserves.
Well,
You're-
that was what implied by the last speaker.
Well, what we're saying is you're asking for this minimal increase in the rates when you have this huge reserve of funds in there. And the other,
The reserves are designated for a stated purpose, and it wouldn't be proper financial management to use them for the base or the usage charge.
okay, another question I have, the balloon payment that would be coming up that's gonna be paid, there's a lot of people here in the city that are paying into this fund and where those reserves are. What balloon payment is coming up? Is that for the water tower in Pleasant Lake? Because I'm under the assumption that there's one water fund and the majority of those costs are being paid by the core city. Because there's only 27 homes out there on that water tower, and we're paying for it. And the other thing I have a problem with this rate increase is there's 3.5 million gallons unaccounted for in that water study. There's 22 million gallons pumped in a year, selling 18 million. 3.5 million gallons are unaccounted for. I think we should find that leak. That's a lot of, that's 15.85% of the budget.
Is he correct?
Well, I can pull the papers out, I got them right here.
No, it is 15.85%, but the difference is that The city hall is not on the water, but we do reallocate funds for that. The fire department is not on, but we reallocate funds to that. What else isn't metered? The ball
Starting
diamonds,
this year that
ball
started.
diamonds.
Softball.
And that was,
And
that
that's
was
what
a
we're trying
change
to-
we made to say
Exactly.
that the city should, in effect, pay for their portion of the water usage. So that's part of it. And the other part just comes, some of it is due to maintenance, when you're flushing lines, other types of things where you're using water for the benefit of the system, and it's not billed to anyone, but it is to keep the system working for everyone.
I'm under the assumption that there's many times that the water towers are kind of pumped out because there's too much water in there after it's been pumped, treated, and then just dumped.
That, I believe, was a one-time isolated case when we had to start
A
up.
couple of times out in Brentwood, when we only had 6 homes on the
Yeah,
system.
but it's still, as Rick stated, or as Mr. Tallman stated, that's still water that is flushed down that cannot be used or something like that.
But your unaccounted water, it might be 3 million gallons, but it's not a leak. Unaccounted water for, on your chart, is water that the city did not bill out, which is City Hall, the maintenance shop, Flushing, Fire Department, softball park. All that is contributing to your 3 million gallons of unaccounted.
So City Hall doesn't have a water meter?
They do, but the City Hall up to this year didn't pay a water bill. They are now, nor did the softball park. They are now. It's getting spread to all the taxpayers of Rockville, just not the water users.
Right.
Correct. And
My
that-
concern with the water tower out by the interstate for the Brentwood, there's a lot of cost there. Who's bearing that cost? The core city. We are,
The assessments from Archon, the assessments from, who's the other ones out there?
Chilton and
Chopin.
the Voids
Ones that are
will.
paying.
but I thought those
infrastructure.
assessments are all in rears. They haven't been paying them, have they?
Some of them they have.
Some of them they have?
I mean, we've been able to cash flow so far.
You, when that development went in, the Archon development folks paid like $694,000 upfront on that water tower. So that was a big share right off the get-go.
You know what, this worked before.
Yeah, it did.
You know, you shut off the other machine, would that have some bearing on it?
Well, he's unplugged it, right, Rick?
Yeah. But that's what I had as far as the rate increase. The rest of it was talking about the rates.
Yeah, we just had it on.
I can show you, this wasn't what I asked for as far as the billing here, but I did do the extra calculations. Okay, under this, as we're looking at a single family versus a 4-unit. As it's stated here, that's per unit. Single family bill here, you can't really read it. It was $46.94 for 1,000 gallons. Let's see, where are we at? Here it is. Yeah, $46.94 for 1,000 gallons. And the 4-unit would pay $174.16 for 4 units for that same 1,000 gallons.
But if you had 4 single-family homes, they'd pay 100, whatever it came out to, if you, about roughly the same thing. So, I mean, Rick, we're back to the conversation
Are we here
about
to debate the
the
water rate
units
structure
and,
or
and,
this?
I mean, it's
That's
back to what,
ridiculous.
you know, Jeff said. We decided every unit is a unit, and that's the basis on which we're going to do it.
Okay, I can see we're not gonna get anywhere in,
Well, that wasn't the purpose of this hearing.
This is a water rate increase structure.
I've tried, I've given you the letter in January, I asked for your input.
Anybody else wish to speak? Go ahead.
Good evening, Council. Steve Funenstein, I live on 802 Ptarmigan, south side of the city. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't know exactly what you have all decided on as a council about what you're going to do as far as your increments or whatever. I agree with that, so I can't even speak on that part. I'm not even going to go there. But I think what we, as of who is here, we really have to be concerned about how we, granted, everybody's carrying a burden about it increases. And I think we're to the point that, we as citizens, I don't even know what the increase we're going to be getting for water, but from what I'm hearing, it's very substantial. And the thing is, how much are we as citizens have to keep paying out, when you can just simply say, we're going to increase, and this is how much you're going to pay. Now, when you go ahead and you talk about increments, was there a public hearing as far as in regards to how you're going to increment your payments? Or was that just your decision of how you're going to go and charge your increments as far as units?
This is the public hearing. We did a water and sewer rate study, in-depth study, and came up with the increase that's necessary. Rena, do you have the numbers? Maybe some of these people, because everybody's talking about a huge increase. We're not talking about
I'm
that
not talking
huge.
about that.
We
Steve,
have
I
the
think
numbers of where we're at for the
if you
base.
probably,
What was the base rate?
4% on the base fee and 7% on the water usage side.
Well, it's actually 3.7. We're going from 9.20 on a base rate to 9.54, and on the per gallon charge from 3.32 per 1,000 gallons to 3.55.
And
Which is,
when-
what percent is that, Sue?
That's 6.9.
We're going 27 cents on the base monthly charge and
I guess,
32 on the usage charge.
I guess what I'm getting at, if I'm probably consensus for the majority of the people that are here, and that is, I think in all rights, when it was brought up first, is, you need to be fair to all the citizens of the city. And I don't want to be pinpointing, but there's a lot of you council members that are not on city water services. So it's very easy for you to make a decision when it's not affecting you personally, when it's affecting all of us. So I'm just saying that as a council, you need to look as if you were paying that bill, because most of you don't have to pay that bill. So it's easy for you to make that assessment. But when you start going to that type of thing, then you need to bring the citizens and see how can it be equalized so it's fair. Because, we're all going through expenditures. My health care just went up 70% within the last 2 years. Where am I? I can't go to my boss and say, guess what? I want more because my health insurance is going up. I want more because my water rate's going up. I want more because my sewer's going up. I'm going down, 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 down. And I have to start fighting for what I have. But I think the thing is, with you as a council, you need to start looking at not just you, because you're not paying the bill, we are. So it's easy, I guess that's something I wanted to say. So I guess that's where we are all coming from. Because you decided this rate increment as you as a council, not even thinking about what the citizens who voted you in, having you representing us for. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
I can assure you, we don't get any pleasure in having to raise rates, but we do have an obligation to raise rates when they're necessary to cover increased operating expenses, and we wouldn't be here unless we were required to do that.
Here's the other question I have is, I'm sorry for it, but so often you hear about the rent that we get on the water tower that is paid to the city for that water tower for the use as an antenna. How much of that funding is used for defraying our water expenses? I'm understanding that most of that goes to the
10%.
general fund.
What percentage is it, Rena?
10%.
10%?
Okay, why isn't more of that cost coming from the water tower, from a renting that it's using water facilities? It's using water, energy that's coming in from that water tower that's being used for water. Why can't the city start looking at putting a little bit more of that reserve or that income into the water system? I admit, I don't know how all the funds are split up, and I apologize for making that assumption.
I think part of the concern on that was that, if the rental payment goes away, because it's not a guarantee and it's not actually part of operating the water fund, that if that goes away, we would have to look at increasing rates. Now, we did decide to apply part of it because we are trying to look at how do we keep the rates as low as we can, but still operate a water fund that is in the black, which is why the council made the change to allocate part of the water tower rent and to charge the city, which is a change that was made fairly recently, so that everybody who's using the water is paying sort of a fair portion, including the city.
Mr. Mayor, can I just cite for those that want to know exactly what does this mean to you? A single-family home using 1,000 gallons every 2 months, it's an increase of 91 cents every 2 months. If you use 5,000 gallons of water, it's an increase of $1.83 every 2 months. 10,000 is $2.98. 15,000 is $4.13. 20,000 is $5.28. So you
And-
divide that in half by a month, okay?
And Rena, I think when we looked at it, isn't the average usage 4,000 some gallons on average?
Yes, yeah.
So, for most people, the change will be $1.83 or less. Now, there could be some users that are larger than that, and I think it would be looking at what your usage is.
When was our last rate increase to?
2010.
So 2 years, or 3 years ago, okay.
But it was 3 years running at that time,
Yep.
3 years in a row. That was a mandate from earlier administration.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Well, my name is Bill Byers. I live with, I rent from Rick. I heard somebody say something about, there's 3 million gallons used by the city. Is it, is this a Band-Aid to fix a problem that the city created that I have to pay? That's a question I have there. I'm 35 years old. This is the first time I've ever had my own place. I've been homeless in the streets of St. Cloud since 2005. I finally get a chance to get a place of my own, and I'm presented with this problem. I also understand that you're gonna have a future debate on criminal background checks, right? I'd like to know when that is. That's April 17th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'd like to get a sheet on that if I could. But what I'm being told, I'm gonna have to pay $70 more. And
A year?
I'm already paying $415 a month. I can hardly afford that. Plus electricity. That's almost $500. So I'm being told that it's $70 more.
Well, let me clarify. I informed my tenants that the city does have an ordinance in place that requires separate water meters, right or wrong.
Correct.
Okay. So I informed my tenants to be here because I thought we would be able to tackle this rate structure issue, but you don't want to talk about it. If the water meters were required, I know you're not enforcing it, and I just had reminded everybody that there is an ordinance in place that does require them. If it was in place, each tenant would get a bill for that water meter then with the base fees, which are over $35. All the base fees before a single drop of water is used. That equates to over $70 for a 2-month bill. That's what he's referring to. And that's what it is. Because in that 12 unit, my base fees are $846 every 2 months before a single drop of water is used. If the building burnt down and there was not a single tenant in there, I'm sure I'd still get an $846 bill from you.
I'm sorry, I just wanted clarification from that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, the past mayor, Vince Schaefer, called me today and asked to convey something. Should I do that through the open forum there, or should I wait until after the public hearing?
Is it in regards to the water rate?
Water rates.
Go ahead and do it right
Okay.
here.
And the past mayor, Vince Schaefer, contacted me today, realizing it was on, but he has a sciatic nerve challenge, so he could not be here tonight. But he asked that I convey, and some of those of us who have been around a while have shared the concern that he has and that Mr. Tallman brought up, and that is the alleged disparity between the cross payment or the cross, I almost said cross-pollination, but it's the paying of the core city, and he felt that at least there should have been an attempt to try to figure out what the cost factor, and if those 27 homes that were built, but 24 of them, I believe, currently, 3 of them are in receivership or something like that, so there's like money coming in from 24, I believe he stated. If that burden can't be picked up by the 24, then would it be feasible to put that onto the ad valorem tax rather than to have the core city cross payment of that? So that was, I believe, the gist of what he was asking me to bring out publicly here this evening.
Okay, thanks, Dwayne.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
Motion been made and second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
You said the average was 4,000 gallons per person, so that's for 2 months.
For 2 months.
So, what did that equal as far as an increase?
$1.83.
$1.83, plus you have the 34.
That's at 5,000, so yeah, it's a little less.
That's 34 cents. So basically, you're looking at a $13 a year increase for the average
For the year.
for the year.
And Randy, that was, I think, for a single-family home. I think when we did the water rate study, I believe it came out to 4,000 something. Does that sound right, Judy? It was under 5,000, I think, as an
You're looking
average.
basically at $1.09 per resident a month increase. I mean, costs do go up.
Well,
I understand, it's been 3 years, I mean, you're looking at an average of about 5%. You're looking at 1.66%.
Per year.
Well, Mr. Mayor and council members, if I could just add a few comments, and quite frankly, I respect your ruling or decision that we're not going to pursue that, Mr. Mayor, regarding the change in the water rate base fees. But quite frankly, there are a few things. The advantage of a flat fee is that it's simple. You just add additional base fees, and quite frankly, there's a revenue that comes in. The disadvantage, that it doesn't encourage anything for conservation. Therein lies the problem. We have a state mandate that there's conservation that must be started by 2013. It was deferred, so sometimes along the line. So if, in fact, that we look at, and going back to what I tried to share at the finance meeting last month, and that is that if we lowered our base fee to truly what most people feel is the appropriate amount and increased the water usage side, the net result for the average residential home isn't going to change if we're not tweaking the base rate formula of multiple units. So quite frankly, I think that's one of the things that the report showed, and I wasn't there. I had asked for input from a resident from the community, was not respected or honored. I believe it was the outside source, and I forget her name right now, from water, and then Sue, our finance chair, and Rena, our staff person. Those are the 3 that I believe generated that water study report. And quite frankly, with that in mind, not saying that an additional face would have helped the process, but I took the liberty of digging in. After last month's finance meeting, is three hours before that is when I realized that there was a water study complete. And as a city council member, I've shared it before and I'll say it again, believe but verify. So I did some verifying. And so I had asked city staff, trying to make sure that I didn't go and overuse my right as a city council member. It's the only request I had this time around. 4 years ago, I got reprimanded for using too much staff time for the specific use of water rate. So I wanted to honor that. So I did. I specifically asked for 3 things. And that one of them is the city report year-end for the Water Enterprise Fund, the year 2010, 2011, 2012. Started to do some research. In the year 2011, which was the year supposedly that we're using as a $10,000 shortage, there was one particular number that jumped right up, and that is rental, repair, supply, labor included on water towers, I'm assuming. A typical year was 4,000. In the subject year, it was 14,865. So that brings it almost $11,000 shift of cash flow that particular year, 2011. So that would cause 2011 to show it as a negative rather than a standard. One of the other things that was in the report, and I had specifically asked Rena to make sure that she did not, our city administrator, I shouldn't say it on first name, our city administrator, to not have the depreciation. I have a fax to verify it, or email to verify it. The report did show, and I confronted our city administrator about that, and that she said it's a one-time journal entrance per audit, and we're in the middle of our audit right now. I have the floor, ma'am, okay? So 63,000 showed up in the report as depreciation. We never use depreciation in our calculations for our revenue and our expenses, yet it shows up. In the year 2010, it showed up in 2011, so $53,000 worth of depreciation. Now, maybe it was after the fact and closed out our year, and then the audit did the one-time journal entry. It might be. Okay, that's fine and dandy.
Yeah, I mean, depreciation and non-cash, so.
This year, we're gonna have another glitch that's gonna show up. Every year, we have $500 put into the budget for the wellhead protection. We do the DWISMA, drinking water, help me out, Rena, it's drinking water, whatever. And this year was the year. Every 10 years, it needs to be done by the health department, correct? Somebody mandates that to the city. So this happens to be the year. It was just about $5,000 that we spent, 4,700 and some change. That's gonna show up again as a one-time as a one-time income or expense, I should say, on the expenditure side that typically would not be on your standard run. So when we do this year-end review, we must be cognizant of all the numbers. And at this stage of the game, if all those numbers are correct and we have to have an increase, it's like running a business. We don't have a choice. If it proves that the numbers are correct, we don't have a choice. I promised to my wife I was not going to get overly agitated today, so I will not. I am agitated, but I'm not going to tell that to the public, okay? So you can ask the mayor, you can ask the city. This one, this guy I got my notes on, I'm going to keep it, because otherwise it might not come back to me. Randy, as a friend, please don't push me.
Okay.
Okay, having said that,
Dwayne,
I think there was a compromise. Mr. Mayor, you have allowed me to go and share this here, and at this stage of the game, I think there's a compromise. Mr. Tallman tried feverishly tonight to get a point across. He did not allow that to happen. That's fine and dandy. But at this stage of the game, we've been fighting this since 2000 whatever. It's time to come to a compromise. Please, I am not ready to vote on this tonight. There's way too many concerns, way too many unanswered questions to go and have me vote for a water increase rate at this stage of the game, particularly if there's a large abundance of reserve money that's out there. So I strongly urge at this stage of the game to table it for a month so we can research it, have you put together a task force that the right people can look at it, and then if the end result is still the same, next month we can make this decision. Thank you.
All right,
I think in regards to the reserves, I feel pretty comfortable what the reserves are there for. So I think when people see the reserves, they think it should go to O&M, when in fact it's gotta be utilized for capital expenditures. You know, if it's $395,000, it's allocated. It's not just sitting there, getting more increases throughout the public. It's actually allocated for a payment that comes due in 2015. I know it'd be nice to use that as operating, but the problem is that in 2015, then we'd have to triple your rates to make up for the shortfall. So, I mean, it's just, we gotta be prudent about the fund in general. And right now, I believe the fund for the following year would be showing a deficit in the O&M. And for that reason, you know, there has to be some sort of increase to make up for it.
Can I just say, just so everybody knows,
Yeah.
yes, I did work on this with Rena and Judy and the person. It was simply using the numbers in the city budget. So it wasn't using year-end numbers.
Not
We
even the
didn't use
year-end, just-
depreciation. It was using the budget to develop, looking at our revenues, where the rates were. This council, the entire council has the numbers. Every line item in the budget was looked at in the water fund to say what part of it is fixed cost, which is the part that makes up the base rate, what part is variable cost, and that goes into your usage rate. And it's looking at everything from utilities, insurance, supplies, staff time. I mean, there is a line-by-line item, which everybody up here has had it for over a month to look at and take a look at it. And it just gets back to, we do have a large debt payment. That's what the reserves are for. And the fund does not operate. It's not self-sustaining, and your water fund needs to be self-sustaining. But I just want to be really clear, we didn't put in depreciation or non-cash costs.
Right.
I have a question. Where did the 395,000 come from?
Special assessments and water rates.
Hookup.
So is
Hookup charges,
Sack and whack.
yeah.
is that what it was last year too? It hasn't changed? Or does it gain every year?
The 392 is from 2011. We've got the audit that's going on next week.
What was it in 2010? That fund.
Oh, I don't have that in front of me.
My question is, does it increase every year, that amount?
Not by 392,000.
No, not by that amount, but does it increase without any rate hikes?
But this rate hike doesn't go into that fund.
Right.
There's different funds that go into different areas. I know it's somewhat complicated, maybe 10 years on, I still don't get it all. But that fund is designated for debt payments. That cannot be used for O&M, operating and maintenance. Operating and maintenance has to be funded by user fees. That's how it's dictated that by law.
So how much of what the people pay in the water goes into that fund each year?
None of that. That goes into O&M. That is used for the budget.
So how did you get that?
I'm pretty certain, right?
How did you get it then if nothing goes into it?
That comes from assessments, SAC, and WAC. That's where that one's built up for.
Only SAC, only whacked, it wouldn't be SAC in the,
Yes.
Yeah, that would
would be
go in the
just
sewer
water
fund, but
availability, yeah.
your
WAC
water,
assessments,
yeah,
yeah.
water assessments and water hookup charges.
And I think Rena mentioned, what was the amount in 2015, 500-some thousand?
554.
We have $554,000 obligation in 2015, where we only have 394 or 374,000. So we're short already to make that 2015 payment.
And
We'll have to refinance it.
that's basically the housing market that's
That's
slowed
not
down.
that
If
far.
the market takes off, yeah, it might.
It's only a couple of years away. I doubt it, we're gonna collect 160,000.
And it could be if there are still some assessments that are coming in,
Yearly
the
assessment.
balance may change, yearly assessments that come in.
I believe, and I asked this to Rena once before, and I believe there was a certain rate of anticipated return on that water availability charge, a certain amount of hookups each and every year, and we're very, very far below that, obviously. So there is going to be the reason that we're gonna be short of the cash flow anticipated to make that balloon payment, obviously. Because there just isn't any coming in, and the municipal bond payments have to be made. They're not gonna wait for the city to have cash flow again
Correct.
before they make their payments. They're coming
So
through.
where are we gonna get the money from?
We're likely gonna have to refinance part of it if we don't have it all.
Yeah, how are we gonna pay for it?
Well, when you,
That's what we're talking about.
right.
If you refinance, then you're just borrowing,
You're elongating
you're reborrowing at
I
a new
understand.
current interest rate.
What I don't understand is how are you gonna get money to
What-
pay it off, whether you refinance it or not?
Well, eventually, we hope to collect enough in assessments and whack charges
charges.
to be able to make those payments.
Yeah.
That's typical for cities, especially cities going through this kind of real estate downturn.
Whenever a city participates with the with the infrastructure going in and municipal bonds are sold, that's a typical way of paying it back, obviously. If I could just 1 second, and I promise not to get my shorts in a bundle here, and that is, when Sue was talking about the portion that was going to go towards the fixed cost amount and the variable cost amount, I tried to get involved in that last month, and I didn't get any place with it. I thought with the public hearing tonight, this was the way. In there, it looks like the operating staff salaries of the 14,000, that's his base salary that doesn't include benefits or para or any of that. Half of it is based toward the base salary. And so the training that Judy and then our prior finance director, Amy Gerger, and myself participated at a rate structuring meeting with the Mr. Brown, Carl Brown out of Missouri. And he used the analogy that the infrastructure, the water tower, and you close the gate valve at the bottom of the water tower. Anything that is used for the infrastructure or of that is base, anything that goes out. So that means when Rick goes out and checks the water, Purity adds stuff to whatever it is. I'm not an expert in that, obviously, chlorine, the chemicals and stuff like that. That becomes part of the usage of the variable side. But in just the one large item, and that is the salaries, half of it is allocated toward the base fee, and the other half of it is allocated towards the site-specific or the field aspect of it. In my personal opinion, that's extremely skewed. I can't imagine that if there's no water coming out of that water tower, that half of that salary should be going to it. And that's what I'm getting at, is that if we can truly look at the water base fee, the water usage fee, so that we can at least get the water base fee where it should be and the water usage fee up. Lower the base fee, increase the water usage fee so that the end user does not have a change in their value or very little uptick, quite frankly. But I think that's where I reiterate again, at this stage of the game, with all those questions and all the ambiguity that's out there tonight, I just don't feel that we as a council are ready to make that decision. And if there is a motion to go forward, I assure you I'm going to vote against it.
Can I just?
I guess my thinking, on something like that, there would always be some subjective reasoning. I mean, yeah, I mean, it might be nice to have a higher base fee and
lower base
fee and a higher water fee. The problem is that somewhere along we got to agree on a compromise in the middle. And I mean, I feel like this is where, you know, we only raised the base fee 3.6%.
That's assuming that you have it at the right start. I think it's at the wrong start right now. 920 is way too high. 920 is way too high.
Dwayne, we have to cut this off, Dwayne. I mean, we've had a completely objective consultant look through this, and, you know, we have 4 out of 5 councilmen that seem satisfied with what that consultant.
Based that 4 of them are going to be
I
wrong
understand,
tonight.
I understand you're passionate about, because it hits close to home, but again, you're here to be objective and look out for the interests of the entire community, Dwayne. So we have to move on.
I don't think that's a call for comment.
All right, the public hearing's over.
What I'd like to see on the, all right, enough. What I'd like to see on the base rate at 954,
It was 920 to start with. That's where we are now.
all right. Hold on 1 second.
I mean, if you look at it if you did the 5,000 gallons, comes out to a 2.8% if you combine the base rate increase and the usage fee, assuming somebody used 5,000 gallons.
What is it?
2.8.
2.8%.
Are you going to
Yeah,
propose something
I think I'm
different?
okay. I guess from my perspective, I see that this is needed. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept the increase on the flat fee from 920 to 954, and the new rate of $3.55 per 1,000 gallons. I also put forth with that, I mean, I do believe that we really watch budgets around here. I mean, we don't spend. And I will continue to watch the budgets on the water and the sewer and everything. And, I mean, I hope we don't have to do a yearly increase. I mean, the hope is that this can last for a couple of years, once again. So that's my motion.
I'll second that.
A motion's been made and second to approve the monthly rate and usage rate increases. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes.
Division of the House. That would be to call for the actual vote, voice vote to verify that we know for record purposes who voted which way. Parliamentary procedure.
Aye.
Parliamentary procedure
Aye.
rules is what we're abiding by.
Randy?
Aye.
Myself, aye.
Fours, all four to my left have voted for it. Dwayne Willenbring against. The records will show that. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Rena, do you have anything else on, we got additions to the agenda?
We have 3 additions to the agenda.
Rick, Public Works, the grading?
We received 3 bids for the grading this summer. And the low bid was Herberg Construction at $76 an hour. It was, this current year, or this last year, was $82 an hour. Staff is recommending going with the low bid,
All right,
as long as the specifications are met.
I'd be fine. I know in the past, and I think all the staff knows, we've had issues once in a while with the Herbert construction. I want this is just a 1-year deal, is that correct?
2 years.
Oh, is it 2 years?
Is it?
Yeah, we always do 2 years.
Rick, is there any mechanical or technological differences between the equipment used by Herberg versus Kramer? That would,
Not that I'm aware of.
doesn't have the,
I think after all these years, it doesn't matter who grades the roads. When the summer comes and it gets dry out and you can't grade a road, everybody complains. And it's the same as anything else. Some person's gonna tell me you did a great job, the next person is gonna do, you don't know how to run a road grade. I heard it when Kramer's did it, I heard it when Myron's done it, and I've heard it when Herbert does it.
So are you comfortable, Rick, with Herbert?
Yep.
I've heard comments too, staying with Rick, like with some of the time last year was so dry that they should have graded our often and they shouldn't have. And then if they don't get the crown in the road right. We've heard it from somebody that said this one did the better job previously with the crown in the road, but, you know.
Are you okay with Herbert construction? What do you think, Don? I mean, you've been kind of around the public works.
Well, the road last year, the issue was when it got so dry.
Dry.
And
I
you
understand
couldn't grade them with, and I think if he can keep the crown, basic thing is to keep that ground in, get the ground, like spring, we'll probably do a reclaim on the roads again. Gravel, bring it in. You can keep that gravel on the road, it'll be fine, you know, but the crown has to stay in the road. And part of the issues was some farmers some say, well, when they graded it, they left too much loose dirt in the middle, you know, they didn't grade it right. I've heard that from all of them.
I think our biggest issue, and it doesn't matter really which company it is getting them here.
Yes.
After a rain, because they all have other jobs that they're working on. So to stop a project to come grade our road seems to be our biggest hurdle.
And that has to be made aware that if we went after rain, hey, Brian, are you gonna be here? It rains on Thursday, can you be here late Friday, the road dried up, can you get that graded? That's the time to do it.
One, and that was specifically one of the issues I remember was timing.
Yes.
And that's something that we are, I mean, granted, a day maybe is okay, but
Right.
4 or 5 days is probably
But
not.
we
And
can
that's
write-
something that can be,
Well, we can write that up in the scope of work and that's a mandate and that's on the contract,
Right.
so it doesn't work. I move that we go with the lowest qualifying bidder and it appears to be Herbert Construction.
can we also have that, the timing issue is within
Yeah,
the.
address it in the
Yeah.
scope of work that,
Quote that I sent out does state that road grading will be performed when the maintenance department asks for it.
okay?
So I would say the scope of work is kind of defined already just in the quote that everybody did receive.
And everybody received the same
And
thing.
it also states, you know, the percentage of crown they need to put on the road.
All right, I'll second it.
Is there anything in the contract that allows us to get out of it after so many warnings, or any out provision at all for unsatisfactory work, or?
Do it.
Pardon?
Lack of performance would do it, and
But is it written in
As long
there?
as we have something that's written that says if they don't, you know, if it's too many days or whatever.
We don't have a formal contract that
Not
we've
like
ever
that,
signed
no.
with these companies.
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
What would happen if we did a 1 year and said that it'll be 2 years as long as,
with a one-year review.
For the
Smart idea.
yeah, and, you know, say that we accepted 2 years, but we could get out of 1 year if the timing isn't there and they don't.
I'd like to add that to my motion, Mr. Mayor.
okay.
As long as that's okay, being as that when we went out for bids, it stated 2 years.
Okay, it is 2 years, but we'll have a one-year review, and then
Yeah.
that'll perform real well, and then next year is not a problem.
Okay.
All right, I'll second that.
A motion,
Did you second?
Just one more quick thing. I know also last year, I never had to do it, but we had I think it was Meyer and Felix as the backup, so in case Kramer's got into a bind and it was gonna be a long time, we just hire the next lowest bidder. I don't know if you're
Yep.
interested in that or not.
Of course.
Yes.
I'd be fine with that.
Yep, that's standard operating procedure for
sure.
just doer.
Okay. Motion's been made and second to approve Herbert Construction for the grading and provision that we have a chance to review after 1 year on a 2-year contract. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Potential farmers market in Rockville.
It's just a thought that came up from staff. We want to know if you're interested in it. We have somebody that's interested in taking it over and running it for the city, because we don't have that time.
They just do it out in the parking lot type of
Right
thing?
out here, yeah.
Cost to the city,
None.
None.
it's a goal. It's a
No
no-brainer.
liability reason.
I did check on the liability. Anybody that sets up shop has to provide the city with a certificate of insurance.
I think it would be great.
Yeah,
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on that?
No, as long as I got you.
Some, I think I read in the paper that was it Cold Spring where they were gonna have, if you put it up, they're moving their farmer's market, they were gonna have a fee, or the farmer's market, maybe association, what we're gonna charge a fee to themselves or who it's for.
But that's amongst how they do it.
Yeah, I
not
believe it's to
city,
them, it's
right.
not there, so
It
that'll
would
be
be
there.
just nice if we tried to coordinate days maybe with
Yes.
area cities, so we weren't sort of
That's true.
doing the same day as Cold Spring or whatever.
Okay,
Or
number
St.
3,
John.
did we already do this public hearing
Yeah, we were just,
for this
I
parcel?
think we did that already, yeah.
Yep.
Or is this a different parcel?
0807?
yeah, that's the one we just did.
No, it was,
440.
I know I
5.
talked about it at that time. No, you need to do this.
Schedule for the same.
417.
Also move to schedule a public hearing.
Motion made and second to schedule public hearing for April 17th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Open forum.
Rick Tallman, you stated as clearly as possible earlier that you won't revisit the rate structure for water and sewer. As you can see, there was a lot of people here that are concerned about that. I'm telling you that your rate structure, the way it charges people, is unfair. It does not treat anybody on the system the same. Everybody ends up paying a different rate with your base fees and your usage fees when you combine them, and you take your total fee that you have and divide it out. Everybody ends up paying a different rate. I'm telling you, you're breaking the state law about being fair and equitable, and you're breaking the state law when it comes down to the conservation effort that you are not to provide a rate structure that has rates go down with increased usage.
That's correct.
If you decide to not revisit it, I'm doing everything I can to settle it here right at the city level. If you don't want to revisit it, then it's going to the courts. I'm trying. I don't want to go that route. All I want to do is be able to present my case. You don't want to listen? Then we'll see you in court.
Okay, anybody else?
Carol Dittman, County Road 47. I got a question regarding the farmer's market. What kind of insurance are you going to require? I mean, I don't think anybody who even goes to the flea markets has insurance for what they sell. What are you going to require?
Rena just answered
Yeah,
that.
she answered it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it then.
The person that's setting up shop has to provide the city with a certificate of insurance.
Yep.
For what?
Liability.
How? What's it going to say? What's it going to insure against?
Carol, I don't have that down pat yet. I would get that from the city insurance agent.
Then why would you insist on something that you don't know what it is yet?
Well, anytime anybody's on our property, we gotta have some sort of insurance to make sure that we
Yeah.
don't get sued.
It's like what they provided for Rockfest, I'm sure. All those stands that were set up.
Well, those are totally different types of stands. The people that came in and sold their crafts, or if somebody sold their mustard, that
What
sort
happens
of
if
thing,
somebody
they
gets
didn't
hurt?
have
What happens
insurance.
if somebody gets hurt at the farmer's market on our property?
Okay, if you're talking a big farmer's
We'll
market
work
and
those
organizer, I can understand
That's
that.
Mr.
But I
Burr
guess what I
question.
was imagining, what I was seeing was, you know, a small stand the size of the table, or maybe 4 tables, 4 different people setting some things up.
Carol, we'll work that out. We're just trying to offer something that's positive for the city once.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing. I was just wondering what type of insurance you're gonna require, but that
figure it
can't
out.
be answered because you don't know yet.
We're capable.
So I'm not quite sure why you would even
Well, it was just
pass
brought-
it and say we're
brought
gonna
up-
do it.
It was brought up by city staff. I think it's a noble idea. And
I-
let's see what's workable.
I believe this council believes that our city administrator will contact our insurance agent, and they will have it covered, and if we need action on it, we will take care of it at that time.
Right.
Before we adjourn, why don't, if I could just so ask, make sure that we run this by the attorney, where things, have you talked with our attorney in regards to, and they said we're okay?
Yep.
Okay, and which attorney was that?
Adam Ripple?
With Rinky Noonan? Okay, and they believe that rates are fair, that we'd be okay in court?
And he based it on what?
Well,
Dwayne,
I'm just.
all right, we're not,
No?
Dwayne,
Okay, sorry.
you've had enough.
I'm just asking that maybe the city administrator just make sure that we get a legal opinion from our attorney to make sure that we are. I mean, I believe it's fair and equitable. I believe it's somewhat subjective as well, and I just want to make sure that he feels that it's defensible. I mean, I guess knowing that what Wake Park charges and stuff, I mean, I know we're on both the same there, so it's one of those things that I think makes sense.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Bruce Kramer, and I actually own 311 Elm Street here, so fourplex in town. And just, during the course of the meeting, I asked to speak just with regard to the water bill. So we've talked about it quite a bit tonight. I want to highlight one of the things that concerns me about it. Fundamentally, the issue that I see from my side, and I recognize I'm biased, but I think that fundamentally charging per unit for an apartment building, I think is wrong. And I say that for a few different reasons. Number one, when we started doing that, I believe it was 2004, that's actually before I owned this building, but at that time, the service provided by the city was never changed, yet the fees were greatly changed. Okay, actually, Mr. Worth, earlier tonight, you actually mentioned the Minnesota League of Cities. Minnesota League of Cities actually says that fees should be commensurate with the service provided. That is absolutely not what's happening. Okay, again, I think it's fundamentally wrong to charge that way. A couple other things that come in that genre of thought. I've talked to a few council members or people in the city, and some folks have made reference to an apartment being the same as a house. That's probably a comparison that shouldn't be made, and it might even be a moot point to this particular argument, but an apartment and those who live there probably have a lot more financial constraints than someone living in a house. We should not make that comparison. So again, there's a variety of reasons, and I don't want to belabor it tonight, but I wanted to share that with you. Please take that into consideration. Charging per unit when there is no difference in service provided is fundamentally wrong. And I think you could make a whole bunch of examples that would probably illustrate that. One that I've got I think if you've got a car driving down a toll road, to charge a Ford F-150 differently based on the number of occupants would be wrong. okay? I think it's the same thing that's happening here, okay? And so that's something I'd like to see, considered and hopefully resolved. And of course, that's just one of the concerns that fall in line with, what Mr. Talman has been, I think, talking to everybody about. So again, please consider that, because again, I think that slice alone is fundamentally wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Rena, as part of what I would like to make sure that make sure that that's brought up, that how we are charging the individual apartment owners that way. Just make sure that that's,
Stated.
that's
Okay.
stated as part of what we're talking with them.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm Dwayne Willenbring, taxpayer, not city council member at this magical moment, where I usually sit up there, not to confuse if the public is paying attention. But, Mr. Mayor, what I was asking for, and that is if Randy's question is germane and our legal counsel gave us either written or verbal or whatever information, that he has something to use as a basis. He's a practicing lawyer, and it's his opinion. I read the same laws that he does. It's the same opinion, okay? So they have to use something as a reference. That's merely all I was asking for when I stopped and you asked me to not speak. So as a taxpayer, that's what I'm asking. So if staff is going to make a report or nod her head that says, yes, the individual that is representing us is, in fact, in true, has made that decision, let us see it in writing. Now I'm going to go back to be a council member. Thank you.
Anybody else? Dwayne, I would add, I stopped you because you weren't giving the same respect that you demanded from the other counselors or Rena. You engaged Rena in a conversation, but yet when she had something to say that you didn't want, you stopped her. But then 30 seconds later, you're asking her a question again, so,
I apologize.
okay.
I'm human.
I'll make a
I got one question I would just bring up. It wasn't in the agenda. I came up with it today and I was talking to Rick. If you were over there that Rick had fallen the other day and he's got a problem with his wrist and the shoulder and that. And we had that snow on Monday, uneven snow. Rick got out plowing later. He was the only one that went out plowing because he had a doctor's appointment and a lot of the roads, some of it got compacted and that. We were able to get Mr. Tipple later in there to help. He plowed out some of the cul-de-sacs, and I personally went up and donated my time to open up around the fire hall. So we did have an emergency we could get out, so I think it's time we as a council and a personnel committee look at filling this position up with a full-time person, because had he gotten severely hurt, there was not a person in this town around that would have plowed our roads on Monday. And I pay my taxes, like everybody else here, people send their water rates, they're paying for usage. I pay my taxes, I want that road plowed, and so does everybody else. That same morning, I had to go to St. Joe. St. Joe Township Road at 10 o'clock was plowed already. And I mean, I don't think they have much bigger crew than we do, so when the spring season come on, and with more work being done, I think it's time we looked at probably advertising for another individual to help Rick out, because if other issues happen with water, several nights he's calling me, I had to go and help him at 2 or 3 in the morning at a lift station or water pump station. If you guys want to do that, he's tried calling several already and said nobody's answered. It's not the best time to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning. So I mean, I think as a duty to the citizen here to keep our roads serviceable and everything, and the water operating, water, sewer, and everything, we should look at the option of possibly hiring another entry grade maintenance or mechanic, whatever our level is at. That's one thing, and I'm going to try and schedule a public works meeting this coming week, probably with Rick, myself, and probably get Jody from the county too, and do a little more discussing on 138. Find out what they want to do, if they want to fix it up for us, or how much funding, or what we'd have to do. So we can make that decision this spring if we want to accept it or not, so we have money to go ahead with other projects if we don't do it. So that's something just for food for thought up till the next meeting, or if you think of something we should look at now, but I think we better do something here. We were lucky this time.
You recommending part-time or full-time?
Full-time.
I don't know, Don, after, increasing rates just a little bit, it seems like the taxpayers really.
Well, the taxpayer, there's budgeted for maintenance
Well, I
already.
understand that, but the roads need fixing too.
Yes.
I mean, you know what, there's only so much money to go around, and, I mean, I don't know, right now, I don't think it's a good time.
Well, I'm just suggesting, I think we're gonna have issues come this summer with Rick tries to do certain projects when we have a joint agreement with Cold Spring and Richmond where we do patching. He could be just started out there, another issue, and we don't get done.
I
He's
don't
out there
understand
and
why
he's,
we can't use, part-time help there and, to get us through, and then as far as lawn mowing, use part-time, I mean.
I guess
Outsourcing.
I would, I think it might be nice if we had the personnel committee or somebody at least look at it to say, what's the work coming up? I mean, because I don't disagree with Don, and we also do expect to provide good service to the taxpayers, and so there's a balance there. So I guess I'd like to know, what's the work that's coming up? If we're saying part-timer, he's gotta have on-call people, well, I wanna know that we have a list that when he calls, we actually get somebody, because I don't think it's okay to have it snow and our roads don't get done. I mean, that's a safety issue also. So I think we ought to at least have a conversation about it to just make sure that the work is being covered in a way that meets the service requirements.
and I was when this last time, when Nick had left that time, there was an article in the Record that several people had called me in regards to this, if we were gonna go with part-time, because it meant some of that. And they said, these people I know had excellent backgrounds for that. They said they would not be interested in a part-time job, from the horse's mouth.
How about outsourcing?
You're outsourcing, Richmond outsources for their water, people's service, you're gonna get a flat contract, and then what about overtime? Then you're gonna pay extra. There's always separate, I mean,
Well,
when
I
you
think
have
you
your
can look
person
at
here.
it.
I'm just asking.
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
could.
asking.
I think you have to
I mean,
look
we
at
gotta
it and
look
look
at
at the
it.
cost.
The cost,
Yeah, I agree.
we have to look at there, because I think the issue is if something goes wrong, there's nobody here. And people call because there was no maintenance here, and somebody's basements all of a sudden have a problem with the sewer because the maintenance person wasn't here to check and get everything reset. I don't wanna be the one that's gonna have to, we're gonna have to answer to it. Why didn't you have these people available?
Well, I always say you gotta answer the other side too. These people who are constantly saying that they can't afford property tax increases.
Right,
I hear that
understandable.
just constantly. And I mean, it's kinda like you got a balancing act and.
I hear like,
I also heard you say earlier that we're gonna have to be fixing roads here, cause we
Yes,
got a lot of issues and stuff, and I mean, someone's gotta give, I mean, if you're gonna put something like that, you gotta put together a plan and, tell us.
well, that's why I brought up here, so there's some food for thought, and like Sue said, the personnel committee will look at, and then like people out there said, we're on a fixed budget. Every person in this room is on a fixed budget. So I hear that all the time, I'm on a fixed budget, everybody else is here. You can make so much money, you spend so much. So if it goes up, your taxes go up, you gotta find a way to pay for it, you have no control. Or the groceries, you're either gonna buy the steaks, or you're gonna buy the cheaper cuts. So, I mean,
Yeah, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you're elected to really watch the best you can over the, funds of the taxpayer, and I mean, I think that's what we're elected to do. I think that's, it is, it's, like I said, there's a balancing act.
yeah,
Right.
but my concern is here, if something happens to Rick, we could have a part-time, that part-times don't know how to fix it,